PlayStation 5 has now been available for 1 full year, and it really doesn't feel like it, especially since we should be using the word available more loosely. For most people out there, it's not exactly easy to just buy a PS5 whenever you want, and supply issues aside, Sony still has been able to move over 13.4 million consoles since launch, and that is a staggering amount considering we have no idea how high that number could actually be if the company was able to fully satisfy consumer demand. With that said, over the course of a year, we've seen exclusive games launch, new system software updates, a few accessories, a PlayStation showcase, and more. This is the first year of PlayStation 5. For games, it's hard to argue against the output we've seen so far. At launch, one could have made the case that PS5 had one of the strongest lineups in console history, with a beautiful Demon's Souls remake, Spider-Man Miles Morales, Sackboy Big Adventure, Astro's Playroom, and the slate of quality third-party releases. That very much holds true. PS5 ran out of the gate with a varied roster of titles. Despite this being a transitional period where many of these games are also available on PS4, there's still significant quality of life improvement on Sony's newest hardware, ranging from a higher base resolution, 60 FPS performance modes, and extremely short load times. Which, these are all sort of expected before getting into more bespoke PS5 features like 3D audio, the DualSense, or the UI's activity card system. This has continued to be the case for the majority of PS5's first year. Most games shipping today have PS4 versions, so there's certainly no requirement to jump into new hardware, but if you do, you're not going to want to go back, and that might be enough for someone who's getting tired of a sluggish PS4 that at this point is seriously starting to show its age. But besides that, there are still some PS5 exclusive games that have shipped since launch directly from PlayStation Studios, like my personal favorite, Returnal. This isn't exactly a game for everyone, as it is a difficult bullet hell roguelite, but it is an incredible game if that description sounds like something you can get down with. Ratchet Clank Rift Apart will have more broad appeal as a 3D platformer, and this game speaks for itself as to just how absolutely breathtaking it looks. No amount of compressed 4K YouTube footage does it justice. The fine detail of the character models and environments without a doubt reach that visual expectation on next-generation hardware. Examples are far and few between, but Ratchet is one of them. It's on the shorter side, yes, but it's a feel-good experience with chaotic and fun gunplay that I'd recommend to anybody. Another title out of PlayStation Studios is Destruction All-Stars. This is primarily an online car combat game that, at best, is just okay, and at worst is something you try one time and then never play again. I don't expect this one to have much life left in it in another year's time. Finally, we have Deathloop, a timed exclusive from Arcane Lyon. Currently, it's only on PlayStation 5 and PC, but this is another great game worth checking out. It's a narrative-based FPS with experimental gunplay and a really interesting time loop function that isn't easily explained, or at least not right now, but those are the highlight truly exclusive PS5 games so far, and they shouldn't take away from the fact that this year also saw a lot of native PS5 games for previously released PS4 titles, like Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut, Death Stranding Director's Cut, and Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade, all of which feature new content and PS5 specific enhancements. Unless you haven't played them already, then these are more on the filler side of PS5's first year, but still, they're welcomed nonetheless. What's also been great are the patches to some of Sony's back catalog of PS4 games. Backwards compatibility has been largely a fantastic experience, but there are still plenty of titles where the frame rate cap keeps them at 30 FPS. Throughout the year, Ratchet & Clank 2016, Ghost of Tsushima, Horizon Zero Dawn, Days Gone, God of War, and The Last of Us Part 2 were all patched to run at 60 FPS on PS5. Between that and the various native free game upgrades offered from third party, your current library simply plays and feels better on PS5 in every conceivable way. That's why, even without a flood of truly next-gen games, this console has been great to use. There's nothing wrong with this being a really good PS4 for the time being, if that's all you have or want to play. The real sore spot has just been the countless ways publishers have adopted the free, or not free model of offering upgrades on PS5. In an ideal world, there's one way to do it, but that hasn't been the case, and unfortunately Sony themselves haven't been very consistent. At launch, Spider-Man and Sackboy were free, but Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut was a rather lackluster visual upgrade where, if you're upgrading from PS4, it would cost $10, but that's not the full story since you're likely upgrading from a normal copy of the game, in which case it's $30, which would be fine since you're now accessing new content, but upgrading a base PS4 copy to Director's Cut PS4 is $20, so there's still that extra $10 tacked on going to PS5. Death Stranding, however, is a simple $10 fee. There was also the moment where Sony initially confirmed Horizon Forbidden West would have no upgrade option at all until they backpedaled and agreed they would honor their original statement of offering a free upgrade. And now we know from here on out, cross-gen PlayStation Studio games will offer a flat $10 upgrade. And this isn't just Sony, there's been other fringe cases with different publishers as well, but thankfully most games so far have seen a free upgrade, and that's awesome. All in all, it's been a really good first year. PlayStation themselves have put out a lot of games to support their hardware, and while Horizon Forbidden West, God of War Ragnarok, and Gran Turismo 7 all missed this year, 2 of these are expected in the first quarter of 2022. If PS4 was any indication, there are some really exciting things coming out of Sony's first and second party, and there hasn't been too much waiting to start having those experiences today and also in the near future. When it comes to the user interface and overall experience, there's been some noticeable improvements already. Around launch, the foundation that Sony set out with their new UI was one that looked very pretty and clean, but also had a few finicky drawbacks. The PlayStation Store itself was lacking, not having any sort of dedicated space for sales, or being able to easily see all of the latest game releases, both of which have now been fixed. It was only just a few weeks ago that the store now finally has a dedicated row of games that show you a true chronological list of new game releases. It's things like these that should have been there day one, but at least it's been addressed within the first year. Sony has also corrected the obtuse way the UI presents the PS5 and PS4 version of the same game if you happen to have both of them installed, which you should be able to do if you want, but previously they'd default that to a single icon. Then you'd have to switch the version manually by using options and changing it that way. Now they sit as separate icons with clearly displayed labels showing you what version it actually is. And these labels are used across the entire console now, so you know exactly what you're looking at. It should have been that way from the start, but hey, it's fixed now, and it works. Sony has also made corrections to things like importing PS4 saves for the PS5 version, or PS4 games not being able to run at 120 frames per second without a native PS5 version. They're still not exactly graceful solutions, as developers do need to make the appropriate changes on their end if they want to support these, but moving forward, it's now possible. For example, Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut on PS5 can just read the PS4 save right away and import it from there. Instead of having to boot up the old version of the game, manually upload the save, and then go to the PS5 version, you don't have to do that anymore, assuming developers have supported the new way to import saves. There's also been a range of new adjustments and features, like the trophy list now being displayed vertically. Now you can read most of the text on a trophy without having to open it, and the trophy tracker so far has been very useful for keeping tabs on things that I'm working towards. There's audio EQ presets if you use the Pulse 3D wireless headset, and that's been interesting to experiment with. You can also customize the control center more freely, rearranging the icons to your liking. It's a lot of small things, but they go a long way. As for the control center itself and its hallmark feature, the cards, this is a different story. Around launch I was optimistic, but it seemed too early to say for sure that these would make much of a difference in the overall user experience, and after a year I can personally say I just don't use them as a way of jumping between different parts of a game. That was one of the highlight features Sony touted, but admittedly, I just have not been doing that at all. Most games have some kind of fast travel built in, and it's simply more accessible to do that if I'm already playing it. If I'm on the home screen, I never really felt compelled to start a game through a card. Normally, I just go for a cold boot so I can get a sense of where I was last. If I were to jump right into a mission or something from a card, then I lose that. And this is something where I've made mental notes of these habits, it just hasn't been necessary in most moments. But that's just me. Perhaps there are others out there using them as intended, or maybe they're really great for getting into multiplayer matches very quickly, but old habits die hard, and cold booting games and fast travel is what I've stuck to. PS5 is already really fast enough as is doing these functions. I do, however, still really enjoy the more simple aspect of cards. Having estimated time for missions, or a custom tracker the developer has made for collectibles, it's awesome. But there is a problem with these as well. On plenty of occasions, I'd check the estimated time and it's not there, which is quite odd when you know the game you're playing has them. You know the developer was responsible for them being there. Recently for Ghost of Tsushima, I wanted to see how long this mission would be since the game warned me it would take a while, and it didn't say, next to a bunch of cards where it says 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes. So that was a really odd circumstance. For the tracking functionality, this was well documented in my Platinum Trophy run for Returnal, which I posted to YouTube as well, and several of the tracking cards were not displaying correctly or tracking at all. The games that do support cards properly are already far and few between, but you would hope that when they're there, it's reliable. And that's the other caveat, developer support is a mixed bag. Some games, there's just a simple main mission card with no purpose whatsoever, and it's a shame really, because when done right, the cards offer a lot of great context to what you're doing or what you're working towards. Perhaps the most notable feature is the option to expand your internal storage with a compatible M.2 drive. We knew this feature was on the way, and thankfully it's been enabled before PS5 reached its first birthday, and it's a pretty painless experience, despite what you might have heard otherwise. Consumers just need to be mindful of buying a drive that is fast enough, has a heatsink, and it will fit properly inside the expansion bay. For most clueless individuals, this is a Google search away for a lot of great resources explaining the process. What's great so far is we're already seeing the best benefit to enabling third-party drives, and that's the price per gigabyte. I bought my Western Digital SN850 1TB for $250 last year. I've now seen that same drive go for as low as $168, and it's only been 1 year. In a few years, you should be able to comfortably buy higher storage options without breaking the bank. My continued recommendation here is wait it out as long as you can, or buy an external drive and use that for PS4 software in order to save more on internal space. You can also move PS5 games to external drives for cold storage now too. It may seem like a largely uneventful year in terms of updates, but I think Sony has tackled a number of good issues so far. I just hope that by the end of year 2, they'll start considering all the data they're gathering on how people are using their consoles and make adjustments from there, because I suspect many are falling into the same habits I am, where cards aren't quite used how they would have liked. Focus on the strengths and fine-tune it to make everyone's lives easier. That and knock out some of the other highly requested features, like folders, or perhaps 1440p support. I don't actually expect they'll prioritize that one, but if they get to it, that'd be great. Also, VRR support would be excellent as well. Two big things that Sony pushed at launch and are still marketing heavily today is the DualSense features and 3D audio. And at this point, I can safely say I love this controller, I really do. It's without a doubt their best controller, it's comfortable, well built, and I still genuinely enjoy the haptics and adaptive triggers. It is one of those things where perspective can really help its case. Oftentimes I'll be playing my PS3, and unsurprisingly a DualShock 3 by today's standards will feel ridiculously cheap, but even just the rumble functionality doesn't feel good at all. More so when I'm playing PSVR, that will require a DualShock 4 even on PS5, and it's shocking just how much of an improvement the DualSense is. Even going to Series X, Microsoft has always made excellent controllers, but I do miss the haptics and triggers. Are they necessary? Not at all, but having them is just a nice little touch that I've really enjoyed this past year. And I'm really happy to see that a lot of developers have made good use out of them. More so than I thought. I really hope that trend continues. 3D audio, on the other hand, is something where if you didn't tell me it was there, I'm just not sure I'd ever know it sounded any different. I might naturally think the games sound great, but otherwise it hasn't exactly been a mind-blowing experience, at least most of the time. This is again highly dependent on each particular game that supports 3D audio. And for me, my last wow moment was Returnal, where a noise was made upstairs during a house sequence, and I made an audible gasp at just how real it sounded. That's the moment that sticks out to me the most. Everything else, it sounds great, don't get me wrong, but the sort of true directionality that 3D audio should be presenting isn't always there. That could just be me being a fringe case based on my audio profile, or maybe I'm sharing a sentiment that a lot of others are feeling. I don't know for sure, but this has been my experience. When it comes to services, there hasn't really been too much movement in this area. At launch, a major PS5 only benefit was the PlayStation Plus collection, and it's still there. It hasn't moved, but Sony hasn't really outlined how long it'll be available for, or if it will ever expand. It's just there, waiting for new PS5 owners. PS Plus games, generally speaking, they've been better than some of the PS4's final years before PS5's introduction, though that's always going to be more of a subjective matter. Depending on where you hear it from, you would think the monthly PS Plus games are outright awful every month, but generally speaking, they've been better. One benefit Sony started testing this year was a video pass in Poland, where members get access to a handful of on-demand movies and TV shows, but it remains to be seen if this program will expand worldwide. Sony did bring back the Play at Home initiative this year, where they gave out 10 free games. That was great, but that's not exactly something you can count on happening every year, and given the rationale for it, you don't exactly want that to happen every year. In terms of PlayStation Now, this is largely the same story as PS Plus. It's gotten better. We're seeing some months where upwards of 5 to 8 games are added, and they're usually quality games worth trying. The more premium titles that have short-term expiration dates have also improved greatly, with recent examples being Red Dead Redemption 2 or The Last of Us Part 2. The crux of the issue right now is the expectation that PS Now reaches an Xbox Game Pass-like equivalency, and the company has very openly expressed they won't be pursuing day one releases on a subscription-based model, so that won't be happening anytime soon. PS Now, for the time being, will still likely focus on having a larger library with quality games that can also be streamed, which this year we also saw an update that introduced 1080p streaming. And that's it really. No other features, still no word on expanding to new territories, nothing. When it comes to services, there's just not really much happening here. They're not exactly bad, but clearly Sony's taking it slow when it comes to outlining a future for them, or increasing the value proposition, especially for something like PS Now, where, yes, the expectations are different, but there's still so many ways they can improve it, and if I didn't know any better, I'd think it's stuck in purgatory. In terms of the future and what we can expect beyond year one, the future is bright. In fact, it feels like there's this whole other side to PS5 that we aren't fully realizing just yet. Right now, the industry is in a period where it's placing extreme importance on exclusive content, valuable technologies, and talent, and with that has come a lot of consolidation. We're seeing it from Amazon, Facebook, Netflix, Epic Games, Tencent, and of course, Microsoft and Sony. It's hard to have any conversation without discussing Microsoft's aggressive acquisitions, and at least for the last year, it was actually Sony that announced multiple new mergers: Bluepoint Games, Housemarque, Firesprite, and Nixxes Software. That last one we won't be expecting original content from, but Sony has tied the knot on mostly existing partners they've worked with for a while. Moreover, there's a lot of money set aside for not only more acquisitions, but investing into the output of existing studios. Many of Sony's teams are likely to start a transition of handling multiple projects that can all layer on top of one another for a consistent release schedule. We also see Sony signing on outside studios like Firewalk, Deviation Games, and Haven Studios, and many of these projects are in the multiplayer or live service space, an area that Sony has been lacking in for years. There's also the incoming next-generation virtual reality headset, which is going to easily command its own set of unique games and possibly studio partnerships and acquisitions to sustain it. Then there's the staggered back catalog of PC releases and the new mobile games initiative. There's PlayStation Productions. These things may not have a direct impact on PS5, but certainly they play a role in the PlayStation vision. One thing is for certain, there's a lot on the way, and it doesn't mean less single-player titles. The company is in growth mode right now. PS5 is vital to that, and assuming everything goes according to plan for Sony, then this year, in hindsight, might be considered boring. To be more specific though, September's PlayStation Showcase gave us a brief look at new game announcements like Spider-Man 2, Wolverine, and the Old Republic remake. Horizon Forbidden West and Gran Turismo 7 are right around the corner. God of War Ragnarok is expected sometime next year, alongside Forspoken, Ghostwire Tokyo, Final Fantasy 16, just to name a few. There is a lot on the way, but it's a good thing knowing, or rather not knowing, the unknown. Plenty of Sony's developers have unannounced projects, and while they might not release next year, we should be finding out what a lot of them are doing by then, and that will paint us a picture of what would then be a peak year for the console, 2023. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Despite there being some obvious sore spots, my initial review of PS5 around launch has held true to the present. The only thing you can really do with this console is nitpick, and assuming you're okay with its odd problems here and there, this is largely an excellent games console. And that's saying a lot for one in its first year. It seems like no matter who you ask, the default answer tends to be, just wait, it's a new console, there's no games, but for the first time, I don't think that really holds up here. Even if you bought a PS5 purely for PS4 titles, then you've just bought the very best PS4 out there that's also future-proofed for PS5 games. And that's assuming you ignore all the quality native PS5 games that have released in the first year. If this isn't considered good in the first year, then nothing would be. It's just a shame that stock has been so hard to come by. Sony has put together a great product, and if the company's prospects deliver, then this first year was only just a warm-up. Thank you so much for watching this review. I hope you found this useful, and if you have a PS5 right now, then I hope you're enjoying it. This past year was pretty good, but it should get a lot better, and well, that's what we're really looking forward to. Which on the flip side of that, if you don't have a PS5 and you're still trying to buy one, I wish you luck, because next year it should get easier to buy one, or at least that's the idea. We'll see how that works for Sony, trying to keep up with consumer demand. But that's it. If you haven't just yet, please subscribe for the best PlayStation news, reviews, and updates that are here on YouTube. You can also follow me on Twitter at Mystic Ryan, and that is it. I will see you all in my next video. You take it easy.